Why do people tell you to be yourself? That is such weird advice. We're going to talk about why, but you've heard this advice before, right? When you're struggling or in pain in some place in your life, could be personal, could be in your job, and someone says, well, just be yourself, as if that's some magic wand that's going to make all of your problems disappear. It's very strange advice when you actually consider what the self is and what it isn't. And that's what I wanted to talk with you a little bit about today. If you're here, you're on a process of self-discovery in some form. When you clicked on this video, you were looking for answers. And I want to try to share with you a version of the answer that you maybe haven't heard before. Most people will tell you that the process of becoming your authentic self or your true self is a process of becoming something, right? Like you're not it now, and you're going to go do a bunch of stuff. You're going to get a bunch of new ideas. Maybe you're going to try a bunch of new practices. And through doing those things, you're going to become this thing in the future called your authentic or true self. It's not going to work that way. The way it's going to work is through a process of unwinding. It's a process of actually identifying and isolating the aspects of yourself that don't serve you, that actually aren't you and were never you in the first place. We could call those things your conditioned self. You actually have to unwind those things to uncover your true self or true sense of self, which is underneath it. And a big part of the problem, the reason why people don't understand this journey, is they think of the self as a noun, right? They think of it as a thing. You're going to find your authentic self, and it's going to have these qualities, and it's going to have these behaviors, and it's going to have these preferences, and probably fame and fortune is going to follow when you actually be yourself in this way that they're describing. None of that is actually true. Because when you encounter an experience of your actual self, there's not that much personality to it. And what there really isn't is avoidance. If you want to define the self in its most basic way, you could define it as more of like a flow state. It's an experience of being in the self state, much more like a verb, where you are going through reality of which your current life, your address, your phone number, your friends, your family, your career, your health profile, your metrics, is only the tiniest version of that flow state self, but it's the one you're used to being, and that's cool. But that flow state, that sense of self, is far more diffuse. You're far less in contact. It's far less relevant what's inside, what's outside, what's me, what's you, what am I feeling, what are you feeling? It's far closer to a state that you've probably heard people describe. Some people describe it as a oneness state or an allness state. But a true sense of self, or that self sense, is a version of you. We're going to come back to that because using the word you is problematic. But let's go with that for the moment. It's a version of you that moves through reality in multiple dimensions, including this one that we're so used to, that we're so conditioned to thinking is the one. It's real. We're moving through that reality without being in conflict with that reality. We're in a sense of flow. And it's very different than the sense of flow when you're, out for a run, or you're doing something physical, or you're in something in your life, what could be writing, whatever floats you into that flow state. It's very different than that because it's a state where the disintegration of our normal sense of ego happens. And we find ourselves moving through the world in a way where we're not triggered. You're not so reactive. You're often not reactive at all, which doesn't mean you don't have emotions. It doesn't mean you don't have thoughts. It doesn't mean you don't have opinions or preferences, but it means you have space around those things, your thoughts, your feelings, your moods. All of the incoming and outgoing of the daily inbox is still real. I think that's where a lot of people get confused. It's not unreal. right? A lot of people do this thing, which we could call spiritual bypassing. And they say, oh, well, what's going on in my life? None of this matters. It's all unreal anyway. And that's using a truth, a lowercase t truth from Buddhist and non-dual thought in a way that it was never intended. You're using it to cover over and actually avoid really important parts of your life. Please don't do that. Don't spiritually bypass your reality because of the lowercase t truth that on one level, through one lens, through one way of looking at it, you could say that it is not real. Not really helpful if you want to be the fully actualized version of yourself. It's a bit of a cheap parlor trick to approach reality in that way. And it will lead to some real problems in your relationship, not to mention your employment. If you treat reality so dismissively like that, please don't do that. So this flow state of self, which is you as a verb, you're moving through reality, you as consciousness moving through reality. How do you get there? This is where it gets incredibly confusing, because you cannot adopt that as an idea. You can't have the belief, oh, I am in a flow state, I'm in the sense of self, there's no separation between me and the outer world. It doesn't work that way. The belief, all beliefs are actually the problem. They're the impediment, or I should say the attachment to those beliefs, where we create a picture around how I am in the world. I am this spiritual person. I am this actualized person that has these advanced, highly evolutionary beliefs. That's actually a fraudulent version of you. That's not what we're talking about. The version of you, that authentic version of you, that is not even on the same map as your personality, as your likes and your dislikes, and your family history and your traumas and your joys and your successes and how much money you have or don't have. That level of self is something else entirely. And the way to get there is through this process of unwinding. And it happens on multiple levels, and it happens over a long period of time. It could take you 5 years if you're fast. It could take you 20 years, and that would be fine. It could take you an entire lifetime to unwind all of the layers of conditioning that you've accumulated in this life and every other. But that's the journey. That's what I want you to consider as a different approach to this thing called authenticity. It's not something you're going to accomplish in the next 30 days. It doesn't go by New Year's resolutions. It doesn't go by decade resolutions. And the reason why is because that sense of self is not fixed. It is not something to be accomplished. It cannot be created or destroyed. It simply is. And the job of being a seeker, whether it was 10,000 years ago or today, the job of the seeker is the same, which is to unwind, to identify all of the ways, all of the tricks that we play in our own mind, in our own body, in our own spirit, to convince ourselves that we're somebody else other than that. That state of self is you. And in that state of you-ness, you would never describe it as me. That's the weirdest thing. It is you. You feel like you. You don't stop feeling like you, but you're not a me. I know that sounds strange, but that's the experience that I want you to aim your sights on, not to accomplish things in life that will be noticed by other people. That's fine. Whatever career goals you have, whatever things you're trying to accomplish, things that you want in your own personal life, your marriage and your family, being a good parent, raising happy kids. These are all wonderful things, but this is your journey. This is between you and between you and the universe. And nobody else gets to play a part in that. What it comes down to, the primary obstacle, which you won't always find right away, But the primary obstacle to experiencing this state of self for yourself are the emotional structures that you accumulated and that were conditioned into you as a small child. There is no way around that. I know sometimes that goes out of fashion, out of vogue. We don't want to talk about the past. We don't want to look at the painful, uncomfortable memories. We don't want to unearth the trauma because it feels hopeless. But it is actually the only way. You have to feel. You have no choice but to feel, slowly but surely, feel your way down into the emotional structures, the things that you don't feel on a day in, day out basis. I'm not talking about being frustrated with your boss or being in love with your partner or having a good time at the game. I'm not talking about any of those things. We could call those your passing moods and feelings and the thoughts of the day. Those are fine. Those are also real. But I'm talking about the emotional structures, the parts that don't move, the icebergs, maybe floating icebergs, but the icebergs that are sitting there on top at the base of your being that are actually keeping you from feeling this flow state of self. There are so many different ways that you can approach it, some of which you're probably already doing. Being mindful, doing therapeutic work, psychological work, working on strengthening your body, working on releasing somatic wounds and so much of the pain and trauma that's held not just in the mind, not just in the heart, but in the physical body. That is all beautiful, great, and noble work. And there's incredible people out there that can help you. You're a Google search away from finding help in those domains. And all I'm hoping to be for you in these videos is a beacon to a different type of search in that internal journey where you slowly but surely unwind every single notion, belief, and value that you have about yourself. Literally everything you think about who you are in the world, to pick each one of those ideas up, each one of those feelings up, each one of those emotions up one by one, look at it, sit with it, feel whatever you need to feel about it, and then let it go. It's that letting go process that will take as long as it takes. It doesn't matter. Do you really care? Does it matter if it takes a year or 10 years? It doesn't matter. As long as each passing day, each passing month, you feel a little bit less stuck in yourself. You feel a little bit less at friction with the world. You feel a little bit more ease in your relationships, then who cares if it takes a year or 10 years or the rest of your life? Because the reality is, it is going to take the rest of your life because yourself is a verb. It is not a fixed thing. It will never be a fixed thing. The only thing that is a fixed thing is the wounded version of yourself, or the inauthentic version of yourself, or some picture of yourself that you think you're supposed to be. Those are the only nouns in this game, and none of them are going to be helpful. What does it mean to you to start unwinding wherever you are? You may have been doing practices like this for a decade already. That's amazing. Maybe today's the first day you ever even considered the idea of what does it mean to be authentic if it doesn't mean just doing whatever I want and saying whatever I want, which is kind of the notion out there, right? When people say be yourself, what are they saying? What do they really mean? Now, some people are meaning something true, but some people are basically saying, giving you a kind of a pass. Well, just do whatever you want, say whatever you think, feel whatever you feel, without ever actually considering whether what you think, how you feel, and what you think you want out of your life are actually coming from a healthy place in you. So it's really bizarre advice that you won't hear from me to be yourself. But what you will hear from me is to practice noticing, seeing, sensing, feeling, and holding space for all of the notions of self that emerge in your reality, and one by one, day by day, identity by identity, subtract. You will not stop being you. Ever. It's impossible. You cannot stop being yourself. Thanks for listening.